Hello and welcome to part 2 of Understanding Sensory Processing and Just Right Approach. We left you last time looking at how you, your family and your child manage sensory and use sensory to regulate throughout the day on a weekly basis, looking at all the different sensory systems, having a look at those strategies using smells, taste, textures, sounds and movements that get yourself back into the green and relaxed and able to respond to everyday external demands and demands around the house. It's having a look at ourselves as we all have sensory processing, but also looking at the dynamics within a family. One thing that might calm one person might send another person dysregulated and finding it tricky. Co-regulation is key, and this is between to adults and children especially. A lot of the children we see are over sensitive to those around them. They might misinterpret what's going on, but they take in that information. So if we're already up finding life tricky and a child does something, we're more likely to hit red than actually if we're in a calmer state. The awareness of looking after yourself. Spend so much time working and looking after the child involved, especially if they are finding life tricky. That awareness and actually how you regulate is really key, both to keep yourself healthy, both physically and emotionally, but also to be able to regulate the child and show a role model of how it is best to look after yourself. Examples of different regulatories that people have told us when we've done this workshop live. Tea and coffee and wine are real key ones, but it's having a look at the routine around the tea and coffee. It's often in the morning as you wake up. Do you jump out of bed, switch on the lights, switch on the radio, go down, make a cup of tea? Or is there a set routine that is dark, you're still sleeping, you're using that movement and that familiarity to actually slowly wake yourself up? There is an element of the caffeine, but mostly it's around that kind of routine that has your tea. Similarly, when you arrive at work, if you're a kind of tea or coffee drinker, there's a set routine that kind of starts you off for the day. Wine is often brought up, but have a think about when you might have a drink. Is it when it's quiet, when all the kids have gone to bed? Is it when it's in a busy environment? Different people use different ways to regulate. A lot of people come up with exercise, and again, this is a similar one. Do you wake up in the morning and do some exercise, or is it at the end of the day actually to unwind and calm? Daylight versus an alarm clock. It's very different to naturally wake up to being woken up suddenly by a child or an alarm. Music, again, volume, rhythm, have a think about what calms you down. And when you're using music, it might be that actually when you're in a better place, music, you might have louder, you might have faster, at other times you might not have it on. We talk a lot with teachers about classrooms and whether you concentrate with background noise better or with silence, whether you concentrate more with more information coming in at once or actually without any. For some children, they need white noise, so actually having a dead quiet space, they're waiting for the next thing that's going to make them jump. So actually having a regular sound actually keeps them more regulated. So having a think of that. The key difference is that actually all these things we use, we can also accommodate other things. So if you're in a busy setting, you're trying to concentrate, most people can slowly filter or try and filter things out. A lot of the children we see can't do this, and you'll see examples of this through our practical examples. Foods, have a think, what foods do you use and even breakfast, is it crunchy, is it chewy? We often in the winter have, warm bowls of porridge versus in the summer it might be a piece of toast. Some of the schools for regulatory actually have buttered toast, and all the children start the day actually having some food. Chewing and sucking are very calming, and again we'll talk about practical strategies later. Have a think about, again, back to your routine, a shower versus a bath. Commercials have really got onto this one with the smells and the scrubs and things. Lavender's calming, zingy, citrusy. Showers are often used in the morning to wake up, and at the end of the day, baths to calm down. It's having a look at all these different sensory and think about, the smells, how that can take you back to a memory very easily, and emotional. It's very connected very closely in the brain to the emotional and memory systems. What we're talking about here is throughout the day, we need to use different strategies to keep us alert and responding to our environment. And we call the green that optimum learning or best place to be. But throughout the day, we're going up and down. We need all the colours. The blue is you're relaxed, you're enabling you to go to sleep. So often when you're waking up, you're in the blue and you slowly head up towards the green, using those different sensory strategies to get you into the green. After breakfast and kind of towards the middle of the morning, you know, if you're doing paperwork, you might dip back into the blue, and then you go off to have a cup of tea. That movement break and stuff gets you back into the green. There could be a number of reasons why you'll head up into the orange, and again, you need orange. That kind of adrenaline gets us moving and gets us acting. It also can be fizzy, you're excited, your birthday, you're giggly. It's a good place to be as well. So throughout the day, we're going up and down. On a bad day, what you might find is that orange goes from that kind of just being a bit unsure and a bit needing to get on with things, and it heads up and up and up. And it doesn't take much then to hit you into fight, flight or freeze, which is the red. If you think about a dark alley and we're walking down it, there's no way we can have a conversation about what we're having for tea tonight. Our systems are on full alert. And if someone comes and puts a hand on our shoulder, it's going to be very easily us going into fight, flight or freeze. So either we're going to flight, run, freeze, stay still, or fight, turn around and bop that person. Most as adults, we can control this reaction, but have a reflection of what your natural state is. When you're in that stress, do you fight, as in you get angry, flight, run and hide in the toilet, or freeze where you put that smile on your face and it's not till later it comes out? A lot of children have this, and it's very common for us to hear that actually a lot of the children will freeze until they get home and then it comes out there. So throughout the day, we're going up and down. After school towards that evening, you have a choice. You either sit on that settee and head into blue until bedtime, or you kind of go into doing something to regulate and you stay in that green and then slowly drop into the blue. Be aware both in the blue and in the orange, it's actually quite tricky to get back. So if you're sat on that settee, your brain can be telling you must go for that walk. It doesn't mean that actually you can action that. Also note that actually they're very nice places to be. If you're lying on a beach dreaming and in the blue, that's a really nice state to be. And for some children, actually, that daydream world is far nicer than actually being in every day. We sometimes talk about the colours in a circle, and this circle with the grey on is really telling you as well that once someone's hit that red, it's giving them that time to actually calm down. And if you don't allow them that time to recover and start to regulate again, you're going to hit them back into red very easily. The other example we give with the circle is for some children, they are so hypervigilant for different reasons that actually they aren't even in the green ever, or very rarely. They tend to be the other side of the circle. And so for some children, they choose to talk about themselves as being in crazy purple, which is between the red and the blue, and that's the state they're always in. And we talk about trying to get them to the other side of the circle rather than just into green. So have a think now, where are you? What colour are you when you're listening to this? Are you in the green? Are you alert? Are you able to listen to what I'm saying? Have I talked too long? Are you heading into blue and actually you're starting to wiggle in your seat trying to keep awake? Or are you heading into orange because I said something that's kind of triggered a memory or thought or something that's happening, or that something else is happening in the house and part of your hearing is going to listen to what they're saying? Have a think, how do you know when you move from colour, when you move from that okay state up into that orange? How do you know when it changes? What tells you both in your body and also in your thoughts and your actions? We often talk about when you're hitting into the blue, you might start to wiggle in your seat, you might get a bit sleepy, start leaning on the desk, start daydreaming off. Similarly, as you're hitting into the orange, you might start to have quite a few thoughts. Again, you might start to get a bit fizzy or a bit distracted. It's having a think of actually what tells you that. And as we talked about with the developmental triangle, those interoceptors and those subtle things that tell us where we are and what colour we're in, some children find very challenging. So just to recap, the green is just right, calm and alert and focused. The orange is bubbly, anxious, fizzy. Fizzy is a nice way to describe it. And the blue is tired, bored, ill, fidgety. Possibly they look calm, but they're not alert. And red is shut down in fight-flight mode, not calm and alert. As we've talked about, what do we do when we're in the red zone? When we hit that red, what is our natural pattern? And it's looking at what other members of your family's natural patterns are, and do they match or actually do they trigger each other? So if you think of the colours as a bottle of Coke, when you're sitting, resting, and in its normal state, it's in green, it's in a nice, slightly bubbly but good state. If you shake it up, it becomes fizzy and it starts to bubble more. If you open the lid, it's in red and it overspills into over the table. And if it's flat and blue, it's not at its best either. So people are a huge source of sensory stimulation. So have a think about that. We can be the last pebble that overflows a bowl of water. So you have a bowl of water and each of those things that are happening during the day are pebbles that are being dropped into that water. Might be a tiny little thing at the end of the day that just drops and the whole lot spills. So sometimes it's hard to work out what's actually triggered the red, and sometimes it can seem quite minimal when actually it's quite something. It's just a build up from the day. So thinking of that analogy, the idea of a sensory program is to actually throughout the day provide the amount of sensory information to help them get back into the green, help you maintain that rather than those pebbles being dropped in and in and in. The sensory experiences need to provide and just be integrated in a structured way and not into a response to a behavioural outburst. So it's actually giving, whether you're having a good or a bad day, those times throughout the day just to reset, if you like. And I have a think we do that naturally. It might be that actually when you go off and have a toilet break or a coffee break or just outside, just to reset. I know when I'm sat at my desk, I'll go off and make a cup of tea, and it's not about the drink, it's about having that movement break, having that break from what you're doing. An example of this is this sensory timetable. So thinking about what might help before school. Some children arrive at school and they're already in the orange for numerous reasons. Using a hanging bar or heavy play on the way to school, a heavy backpack or chewy foods on the way to school, or a sucky water bottle. And then integrating throughout the day, just at the end of break or before break, we often talk to teachers about what happens next. So do they note that the child's more fizzy when they come in from break, or actually are they in a better place? If they're in a better place, it might be good to do exercise before doing something that needs concentration. So the ideas of the programme is to take out and change the environment so it doesn't contribute to over-responding. And so actually that might be a quiet space, a quiet workspace when a child needs to do something, and taking visual distractions away. Putting in, actually, as we say, integrated sensory experiences throughout the day, and actually teaching the child to self-regulate, both in and out of the classroom, and actually gently at the desk. So just pushing on the desk or pushing on the chair, just to regulate as they go through. If you give a child a toolbox, they've got that for life, and that inner awareness of what's going on as well. Profiles are something we really use a lot, and it's actually a really good tool, especially when you're transitioning from primary to secondary, of what the child looks like without giving them all the history and the reasons, but actually what the child looks like in different colours, and more importantly, what helps, and also triggers that might put them in that. So actually a teacher, without knowing any history on the child, can know that actually if a child starts doing certain behaviour, rather than respond to the behaviour, they can actually be proactive and actually get the child back into green. I've spoken to children, and one child told me that actually as he heads into the orange, he starts to kind of shout out and get a bit disruptive. And we talked about what happens next as the teacher tells him off, and then he heads into red. Actually, if the teacher saw that behaviour as actually this child's in orange and I need to do something to allow that child to calm down, it doesn't escalate and it will enable the child to get back into green. We'll talk about practical strategies later, but have a think about the activities you and your child tend to do. Are they focused, open and free? So focused is down and looking at something small. Open and free is kind of looking up, and if you're thinking of a game of catch, that's open and free, whereas actually if you're looking at a target activity, that's focused. Focused things shuts the world out and is very helpful if you're in the orange. Open and free tends to really help get you awake and moving, and so that would be more for a blue. Is it using large movements or small? Is it fast, slow, messy or clean? Having a think about what your child will actively go towards, but also what you go towards, and is there a mismatch? If you've got a child that loves being absolutely messy and you're a very clean person, you're going to have a mismatch in sensory preferences there, and it might actually trigger each other. Have a think about the sensory systems they're using. There's a picture of the child hanging here. A lot of children hang off things. You know, you'll find them hanging off the settee, the banisters. And what happens next? Does that actually help them? Looking at those systems and seeing how else you could provide that information might be really helpful. If it's driving you nuts that they're going around the settee, maybe thinking of some other strategies you could use where they're going upside down or hanging, or setting up obstacle courses, or using a ball where they can go over the ball rather than bounce on your settees.